have Alfred Tolle co-hosting this webinar for Wisdom Together with the Conscious Business Institute. And as I said, he is founder and chairman of Wisdom Together, a former head of marketing at Google, CEO of Lycos. You had a position at Bertelsmann, as I remember correctly, Alfred. And to me, you're one of the shining lights in bringing consciousness and wisdom to the business world. Not only to the business world, but also to the business world. And then we have in this webinar, Peter Mattes. Peter is the president of the Conscious Business Institute and founded the Conscious Business Institute, I believe it was 12 years ago, and has worked with both with individuals and with corporations, institutions, on bringing conscious leadership, authentic leadership, purpose-driven leadership, consciousness into the business world. My name is Clemens Höppner. I'm an international partner of the Conscious Business Institute, and I developed the Conscious Business Ambassadors program together with Peter about 2 years ago. And so I'm happy to facilitate this meeting. We have unmuted you all. You can unmute yourself, and on the lower left, there is a button for you to put your video on if you want to start that, so that we can see you, or to mute and unmute yourself. There is a chat box which you can use to send comments and questions. I think we'll have a question session later on in today's webinar. And in the meantime, you can put them in, and either I will read them out or Peter will see them so that we can take care of them. Also, I am here to assist, so if you have any problems, send me a chat message and I'll try the best to help you on that. And with that, Peter, can I ask you to start the presentation?
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much for the introduction, Clemens, and wonderful to have everybody here. We'll have some more people joining us as we go. It's great to see you all. Let me just start by diving right in. We believe that we're at a really big crossroads in our world, and that if we want to move forward in a way that's sustainable, both for ourselves as individuals, but also for companies and also for our planet, we need to fundamentally rethink the way we conduct business. Here at the Conscious Business Institute, our purpose is to create new ideas, new thinking, new insights, I would say, new models that can help businesses move forward in a more sustainable, more effective way, but also to help individuals create success that's more in alignment with their authentic power, as we call it. So let's dive right in. What we'll be doing today is we'll cover 4 subjects. The first one is to actually look at the issues and the trends that we see in working with global corporations like Starbucks or BMW or Intel or those kind of companies. What's coming around the corner for them? And what are these organizations looking for and grappling with these days? The second thing is that we will look at how can we build conscious businesses? What's really a new approach to success that can work for organizations? If you look at the media, I'm not sure whether you're in California, but definitely the California media, there's more and more talk about conscious business. There's more and more awareness about conscious business and the need to transform organizations. But what people are missing is a step-by-step approach, it seems. That it's still an idea, but how do we get from point A to point B? So that's what we'll talk a little bit about today, about this step-by-step approach that's applicable both for organizations, if you run in an organization, but also for you as an individual, if you want to transform into a better way of working and conducting business. And lastly, we want to introduce you into the Conscious Business Ambassador program, because we believe that we need to combine our forces around the world, combine our energies, combine our mojo and our ideas if we really want to make a difference on a global basis. So let me dive right in. Before I do that, let me give you a quick background about myself so you can relate to where this information is coming from. As you can probably hear, I'm German. I can't leave that accent, but I've been living here in the United States for about 16 years now in Santa Barbara. Enjoying it very much. I started my career at Accenture before I founded my own software company and then sold my shares in it, and then eventually became a venture capitalist. And as a venture capitalist, but also now as the founder of the Conscious Business Institute, I've been in hundreds and hundreds of organizations and spoke to so many teams all around the world. And what I've consistently found over the last 20 years actually is that only a fraction of the people are engaged, maybe 20%, maybe even less, maybe even 10%. And the remaining 90% are really scratching their heads, oftentimes asking, isn't there a better way to work? Isn't there a better way to conduct business? And if there was, how can we get there? As a venture capitalist, that posed a fundamental problem, because if we invested 10, 20, 50, sometimes $100 million in an organization, I asked myself, how much money is invested wisely and how much are we pouring down the drain because people are not fully on board? And to turn around that question is, how would organizations be run? How could they be run if people were fully on board, if they wouldn't just bring their bodies and minds, but also their hearts and their souls to work? And how can we make that happen? But at the same time, if you look around, I mean, this picture shows it from the storms a few months ago. Our world is changing. And if we don't change alongside with it, then something is not going to work out in the future. So the probable future that we will see if we don't do something is going to look a little bit dire. The main things that I saw as an investor and also now in the Conscious Business Institute are these four things that are basically summarized here for you. The first one is that whenever we speak to executives, they don't know what, I mean, they're so overloaded, they can't even find 15 minutes during the next 3 months, for example. There is such a high workload and such a high pressure in an organization that's just simply not sustainable on an individual basis. And people are checking out. I just read a study that 1 in 4 executives is actually depressed. That's horrific if you think about that. The second point is that the United Nations determines workplace stress now as a global epidemics. More than 45% of all illnesses that we see are related to workplace stress. That's something worth thinking about. The third thing is that if we look at organizations, how they are managed today, actually not just organizations, but also our personal relationships to a large extent, governments, the way we educate our children, it's based on what we call the model of dominance and subservience. It's a scarcity-based model where there's not enough money, not enough time, not enough resources, not enough of something. And as a consequence, we as individuals believe that we have to dominate these scarce resources. And as a consequence, we push people, we behave unsustainably, we go to war, we create a lot of conflict and a lot of havoc in our world. This model of dominant subservience has been governing our world for a long, long time. It is a model, as I mentioned, that's based on scarcity, and therefore it's based on fear, on the fear that there's not enough. And whenever there's fear, there cannot be flow. So if we want to create organizations where people are in the flow, where we as individuals can create success where we are in the flow, we need to look at this model and see how we can transform that. The last thing is that we all see it in the news. Our world is facing fundamental changes, whether it's the immigrations, whether it's the climate changes, whether it's the additional pressure, whether it's globalization. The fact is, none of our leaders have been here before. That's what Harvard Business Review writes in an article. I would just like to pick out one of these changes because we see many, many organizations grappling with this. And this is the dealing with the age of acceleration and in particular digitalization. I'm not sure whether you had the pleasure to do so, but there's a book by Thomas Friedman called The World is Flat. This is his older book, but if you look at his newer book, it's called Thank You for Being Late. If you haven't read it, I would really recommend reading it. As part of the research for this book, he had a conversation with Astro Teller, who, if you're not familiar with, is the CEO of Google Moonshot projects. So the big picture projects that Google is putting out. And in this conversation with Teller, Teller scribbled on a napkin for Friedman this graphic that we're seeing here, which is basically Moore's law, which, if you don't know, it states that the speed, the ability, the density, and all these kind of things of computer chips is doubling approximately every 18 months. Gordon Moore, one of the co-founders of Intel, stated that or found that out in the early 70s. At that point, you might have just shrugged your shoulders and said, go ahead, Gordon, that's nice. But now we're at a point where we are at an exponential growth, and something is hitting the fan here, as we can see. This is not the problem. This is actually posing a lot of opportunity, obviously. The problem is the second graphic here and the intersection of this, which is our human ability to change. If you look at research, you will find that as humans, we're actually able to deal with smaller changes in a very good way. We're quite adaptable. So if you book a new ticket on United Airlines or Lufthansa, for example, and suddenly they're charging you for your baggage, first you might throw a hissy fit and you don't like it, but a couple of months later you're accustomed to it and everything is okay again. Maybe not okay, but we've adapted to the change. If it comes to change that challenges our values, however, our fundamental beliefs about the work, about how the world works, we are very, very, very slow at adapting. Just taken as an example, how your father or your mother uses a laptop or uses technology, how you use technology, and then look at the younger generation, how they use technology. There's an adaptation curve that is very, very slow. One of my advisors is on the board of the Men's Warehouse, which is a publicly listed company on the New York Stock Exchange. And they're just recruiting a new board member, he told me. And they're looking at a 38-year-old because they need to find some younger people on the board. When they interviewed the 38-year-old that they're going to hire, he said he's never, ever going into any meetings without his 22-year-old guy. Because the 22-year-old understands technology, the 38-year-old is far away from that. So there is a problem that we are having here, because right now we're at this point. Where these two lines of human ability to change and Moore's law have barely intersected. And what we are seeing is, pardon my French here, a shitstorm. Things are going crazy in our world and everybody's going, oh my God, how are we going to deal with these challenges ahead of us? Let me just give you an example on what this change implies in the business world. If you listen to Brian Kranick's speeches, the CEO of Intel, he draws a comparison between the Intel chip, the first one, the 4004, and the Volkswagen Beetle from 1971, the first chip. And he says if the Volkswagen Beetle would have developed in the same speed that the Intel chip has developed over the last, I think, 35 years or something, 40 years actually, then the Volkswagen Beetle would be able to run 300,000 miles per hour. It would run on it would have 2 million miles per gallon, and it would cost 4 cents. So if you compare the automotive industry compared to the chip industry, you see that there's a big discrepancy that we're dealing with here. When we speak with organizations, we usually see them deal with these changes in 3 different ways. Or if I do it in America, it's this way, 3 different ways. The first one is that many of them say, we need to step on the brake. We need to slow down the accelerated world, which is obviously not going to work because evolution cannot be stopped. This is a typical approach which you hear by let's make America great again, for example. It's the Brexit, it's maybe Erdogan, and it's those tendencies which look in the rear view mirror in order to move forward. And to try to slow down the world, which is not going to happen. So these people are trying to throw wrenches into Moore's law, which is basically good luck with that. The second thing that we see in organizations is that they're trying to deal with a change. All big organizations are realizing we need to change. We need to become more flexible, more agile. We need to deal with this VUCA environment. We need to deal with digitalization. The thing that we see, however, is that they are very much struggling with changing people's mindsets. Because this is not a behavioral change where you suddenly go to somebody and say, you have to be more agile. You have to be more flexible. People don't operate that way. Secondly, if we see the digitalization as a challenge that's in front of us, we will always be in reaction to this challenge as an organization. And if we are dealing in reaction to something, we will never be the leaders. We will be the followers. It's a fear-based approach. So even the second approach to deal with the change will people people will be left behind in organizations. The third approach that we see, which is obviously one that is able to deal with these challenges in a better way, is to ride the wave. And maybe not even to ride the wave, but to create the wave. If you look at organizations like Airbnb, Uber, Amazon, GitHub, for example, or Google, they are not dealing with the change, they are creating the change. Now, I want to make clear that I don't say all of these companies are run in a good way. Just look at Uber and you know that they're not. But there's a mindset behind that that is, I believe, required in order to move into the future for each and every one of us, as well as for organization, which is to be the change in the world, which is to wake up in the morning and to challenge the status quo and to improve the status quo. This is not something that is a change. So if many companies are talking about change management, it doesn't cut it, because a change is usually about doing something different or about doing something better in the same system of thinking. Let me move to the next slide to make this point. So if you think the world is flat, for example, a change would be if you want to find a new route to India to veer off a little bit further to the east or something. But you would never consider going to the west in order to find India. So the only way Christopher Columbus found this new route and actually discovered America was in the belief that the world is round and that he could go actually the other way around to India. This change of thinking caused a transformation. Another example is the iPhone. If you look at Nokia and Ericsson, all those companies, they were thinking of, we have to have these nine dial things on our phone in order to make something work, until somebody else comes along and says, no, we just need one single button here. And it transformed the entire telephone industry. So what we need in order to move forward with conscious business, working in organizations in a different way, and even changing the way we succeed as individuals, is not change. It's not new tools, strategies, or processes, as I write down here. It's really a new consciousness, a new thinking. And that's what we'll look at today, what that thinking might be. So there's a need for this new paradigm on 4 levels, which we see out there in the world. First of all, and this is really a perfect storm. That's why I love this, because we're not just having one person asking for it, but there's a whole world asking for these changes. It is the millions and millions of professionals out there who are yearning to work with more purpose and fulfillment, who are asking, isn't there a better way to conduct business? And then obviously on the leader side, they're asking, can I create a team that's fully engaged, that takes ownership, where I don't need to push them all the time, where I don't need to micromanage all the time? So, and then on an organization level, how are we able to deal with this increasing pressure and complexity so that we can survive in the future, that we can retain the best talent, that we can train up our new people, et cetera, et cetera. And on the 4th level, we obviously have the sustainability of our environment, of our planet, which is the big hoo-ha, obviously, underneath everything. So this is really a perfect storm that brings us into a time in our history where these approaches that we are having are absolutely timely, and when it's really an opening to create a change in organizations. So when we speak with organizations, there are 3 big things that we see. The first thing is really the need to develop a new generations of professionals and leaders that can change the status quo of today's way. If you think about the digitalization approach, again, it needs leaders that are able to create a company culture that is able to be so flexible and agile that we can deal with the challenges ahead. The second big thing that we need is a new approaches for talent engagement and retention. There's a war for talent out there. So organizations need to create cultures where people actually like to work. How's that for a change? And lastly, we need a scalable, a step-by-step approach for building inspiring companies. When we ask people how to build a business culture in organizations, most just them, well, I don't know, you just live it. There is no step-by-step approach for building a company culture on any level of an organization. These kind of approaches help, and we need them in order to transform the way we conduct business. So, for many years, I was asking, what how can it be done? What is really a step-by-step approach to get there? And the bigger question behind that was the one that I wrote down here. What is really different in an inspiring and a conscious business as compared to an ordinary business? And the answers we found in looking at many, many companies, but ultimately it came to me in a meditation, is this circle here. If you imagine yourself, I'm going to lead you through this circle here in a minute. If you imagine yourself on the top left corner, working in an organization where you can fully bring yourself, where you can fully be authentic, whatever that might be, where you can show up without wearing a mask, where you can say what's on your mind, where you can express your gifts and talents. And then based on that, where you can connect to people that you genuinely enjoy working with, maybe even share a vacation with, so we can all feel the sense of genuine connection that we seek for as individuals, where we can build a great team on the top right. The bottom left corner, where you then, together with the team, create a common purpose and pursue this common purpose, because we all want to make a difference in the world as individuals. And lastly, the bottom right quadrant, if you're being financially sustained, if you're making money, doing what you're enjoying doing, and if you're financially sustained and grow, actually. The question from me would be, would there be any reason you would want to leave that organization? We've asked many people over the past years, and most of them just say, no, this is it. I would love to be in that kind of an organization. If you actually look at these 4 quadrants, you will find that it's not just 4 quadrants, but it's really a new operating system that we can shift to. A new model of thinking that if we build educational institutions, if we build our governments, if we even build our personal relationships based on these 4 quadrants, there is an increase in fulfillment and wholeness in those relationships. Just look at your own relationship, for example, maybe to your spouse. There's the same thing that you want. You want to be yourself on the top left. You want to have genuine connection with your spouse, I assume. You want to have a common purpose. Maybe you want to build a house. Maybe you want to create a family, and you want to be financially sustained. So really everything that we do in the world, we want to create fulfilling these 4 quadrants. It's about human behavior. It's not about business. And we are all run by the same needs and desires ultimately. The problem is this, that in our business world, most organizations focus on profits and margins. And yes, we do team building. Yes, many develop a vision and a mission. And yes, many even do individual development or leadership development. But the problem is then when something hits the fan, when there's a crisis, when there are conflicts, we fall back to this lower right quadrant. It's our MO to secure profits and margin. And with that, all of the other circles are becoming a lip service. People lose trust when they know that the leaders fall back to the lower right quadrant if push comes to shove. If you look at a non-profit organization, at a philanthropic organization, you'll find that it moves over to this organizational quadrants. It's all about purpose, and all these other quadrants might be left empty. So the question is, how can we build organizations that are fulfilling these 4 quadrants? Not only when the weather is nice and it's nice and dandy, but even in critical situations. And the second question is, what is this leadership paradigm, this green circle around here, that is necessary in order to build those organizations and to sustain those organizations when the going gets tough? So I just want you to check in for 1 second here and just imagine if you would work in an organization that will fulfill those 4 quadrants. How would it feel? How would you feel if you can fully express yourself? How would you feel if you can genuinely connect to other people? If you feel just really a juicy sense of connection with them? If you can make a difference in the world, if you can really make an impact in the world, and if you're being financially sustained, how would that feel? And look at any traditional organization, maybe the organization that you work in right now, and assess for a moment, if you walk through the corridors of that organization, which quadrants are fulfilled? To what extent are these quadrants being fulfilled, and to what extent are they not? And see whether you can find a correlation that matches there to this model. Just as one quick check-in here. So I mentioned earlier that there's a fundamental shift that is necessary, a fundamental shift in thinking if we want to transform the way businesses are run. Remember the round world and the flat world from the previous slides? What is the shift that's necessary? We believe that it is the current model of success that we are pursuing as in our culture actually for many, many years that is the foundation for all of our suffering. If you look at this current model of success that we're pursuing, it is basically this model that's written here that we have to do more all the time, that we have to accumulate more stuff, and then eventually we become somebody. So go to school, 8 years old, and you have to do more, you have to accumulate good grades, and maybe you become an honor student. And here in the US, I love it, they stick little stickers on the back of the car, my kid is an honor student. And then you go to college and the same thing happens. So you do more, you accumulate a doctor title, and then you become a doctor, for example. And then you go into the business world and the same thing happens. You do more, accumulate money, get a boat, get a house, and then you become a respected personality. It's the model of today, but it's not working anymore. Because if you look at this first thing of the equation here, to do more, it requires us to do more all the time. And clearly, we're all kind of done out. We're tired of everything. So doing more might not be the answer here. The second thing is to accumulate more. If you have a planet of 7 billion people accumulating more and more, it's not sustainable anymore. So this model is just not sustainable. And the last thing is to become somebody. There is no room for what we genuinely seek as individuals in our world, which is the feeling states of freedom, ease, joy, peace of mind, for example. That's what we are striving for in our world. And there's simply no space for these feeling states in this equation here. So what can we do? Is we can shift this model and turn it around this way, which basically means that we have to be authentic first. Again, I mentioned whatever that is because I've never been asked in my school who I really was authentically. So we have to find out what is really our authenticity. And to find out that as we are being authentic, we can actually expand in our success and expand in our life. The second thing is not just do more, but do what our gifts inspire us to do. Each of us has a unique gift that we are here to express, a unique personality, the being level, and a unique gift we are here to express. This is needed in our world. We are here to express this gift. This is a gift that if you express that, you feel in the flow. Work stops being work for you. You can do that at 11 o'clock at night and it doesn't cause you stress or struggle. And whenever we express our gift, we are in the flow of life. And then as the consequence of that, not to have more stuff, but to experience more essence, more abundance, which is financial wealth as well, but also more joy, more freedom, more peace of mind, for example. So you can see that although it's just a little turnaround here, that the fundamental shift is really, is this going to work in our society, or is this just a pipe dream? And obviously, if you believe that this model would work, we probably would have done it a long time ago. But if you look at people that are very successful, you might look at artists that are really shining personalities in this world, you will find that they're actually living by this model on this right side here, on my right side, on being authentic, to doing what your gifts inspired, and then to receiving essence. So hang on, let's move forward here. Let's go back to this culture and leadership program. So what we have here, bearing this in mind, is an approach that is becoming a step-by-step approach for us to transform as individuals and also transform organizations. And secondly, with what I've just said about these fried eggs here that I had on the screen, is that we have to start with the individual. If the new success model is to be authentically ourselves, if we have to express our gifts, we have to start with ourselves to understand who we really are here to be. So this is the Conscious Business Institute approach that we've developed, that we take into organizations and also work with individuals. These 5 modules basically are a transformational approach to move individuals from where they are to where they want to go, or move organizations from where they are to where they want to go. It's a step-by-step curriculum for transforming the way we work and conduct business. Let me just take a couple of seconds into each module here to let you know what it entails. The first one is really, and I'm going to tell a little bit more later about the first one, but the first one is really about understanding what we call your authentic power. Who are you here to be during your lifetime? What are your unique gifts and talents? What is your unique personality? What is the new success model? How can it play out in our life? What is your purpose? And then as we become clear about this authentic power, which is really strong and centered, what keeps us away from that? What is this model of dominance and subservience, and how does it create stress and struggle in our personal life, in our career, and in our businesses? And how can we become accountable for that and kind of heal our emotional system, as we call it, and really claim our authentic power? So this first module is the foundation for conscious business because it builds a very strong personality basis. And a very, very rewarding personality base because we can finally find out who we are here to be. The second thing is from this different beingness level, which we've created in module 1, is now how do we create relationships in a different way? Because if you think about it, the success in your life is dependent on the quality of your relationships. There's a Harvard study that has looked at that for the past, I think, 50, 60 years or 70 years even, and came out with the same thing, that ultimately the success in our life is dependent on our relationship. Unfortunately, we haven't really learned how to build good relationships, nor have we learned how to build good teams. So that's the second module that we take into organizations. The third module then is something that most organizations ask for, is how can we build a purpose-driven culture? What is a step-by-step approach that no matter whether I'm the CEO of an organization or a middle manager, where I can build a purpose-driven culture in my environment? And how can I ingrain this culture into the DNA of the organization so that as the organization grows, the culture grows with the organization? How can I create a movement? How can I step up as a leader that's purpose-driven? What's necessary for that? And then as we move on to module 4 is to take it more into the business world. What kind of structures can we create? Decentralized management structures. How can we lead by values? How can we lead more sustainably? So then we really take it into the business world and make it work on a day-to-day basis and processes. And lastly, this fifth module is the leadership paradigm. What kind of leader do we have to be? What kind of traits do I need to have in order to build a conscious business? And when we look at these traits, some of the fundamental ones, not going to go into much detail here, are basically care for other people, that we genuinely care for other people, that we build a high level of trust in organization, because without trust, everything erodes. And the thing that creates trust in our world is authenticity. So it really comes back to module 1 to create a strong authenticity and then lead with that authenticity in organizations. We can answer more questions if you have as we move forward. I would like to take a little bit of time to step into module 1. And the reason why I would like to do that is because this is I'm going back to this slide here, this is a transformational approach on how to shift organizations. But what we also need at the same time is we need to level up our level of consciousness. We can go through these slides here and through all these approaches with a low level of consciousness, where I'm separate, where I need to just make money all the time, or we can go from a higher level of consciousness where we want to genuinely contribute. This increase in consciousness is a question that I've asked myself for a long time. And actually I met with Ken Wilber a couple of months ago and discussed this, because we're rubbing our heads here. How can we increase the consciousness in individuals? And the approach that we found is basically these 5 steps, which are part of this module 1 that we will be offering in the ambassador program. If you look at these 5 steps, you will find that as you move through these steps, that our consciousness as individuals and our wholeness as individuals increases. Let me just say a few words about each step. This first step is a fundamental shift in thinking. It's something that we've just discussed a little bit, is that we require a completely new model of success in our world. That as a matter of fact, our existing model of success is what's making us suffer. To understand that and then to break away from this existing model of success to the new model of success. And one of the fundamental shifts that necessary is that to understand that we are part of something bigger, that we are not making it alone here on this world, that we are totally isolated, but that we are all interconnected. This shift changes everything. It changes how you deal with your spouse. It changes how you deal with a dog. It changes how you deal with everything around you. So if we can create this shift, which we are doing in module 1, is a fundamental shift for transforming anything in our life. And then we look at this new model of success and ask, how can you apply it in your own career and in your own work? The second step that we take is to understand that the real source of success in your life and in your organization is our authentic power. But again, we have never been asked about our authentic power, or few of us maybe have been, but most of us have not. So we will do personality tests, personality assessments that have helped many of our clients tremendously to understand who you are really here to be during this lifetime. Every one of us comes with a certain personality, and we can see this personality in this personality assessment that we do. We are here to express that unique personality. If that's not being expressed, something is missing in the world. So it's the Conscious Business Institute personality assessment that we'll be going through. The second step that we'll do is look at your deeper drivers. There is a reason, maybe 10, 12 drivers or something for everything that you do, whether it's joining this webinar, whether it is drinking a glass of orange juice, or whether it's the job that you do. It's very powerful to know these deeper drivers, because then you can make empowered decisions and not a decision that's based on some future outcome. The third step that we do is then look at what we call your DQ or your unique talent. As I mentioned earlier, we all come with a unique talent. What is that talent that when you express that, work is not work anymore for you? How do you relate to other people? How do you disseminate information? How do you create conflict and can avoid that in your relationships? Those are things that we'll look at here. And we'll come out with your purpose, an understanding of what you want to be here to contribute to the world. So these first steps provide an enormous amount of clarity about who we are here to be authentically. This opens the door to the fourth step, to understand, why do we create stress and struggle in our life? What's the mechanism, the repeated mechanism, the hidden mechanism in most cases, which we call our emotional system, that's at the root of all our struggle and all our stress in our life. And as I mentioned before, the model that's behind this is this model of dominance and subservience, which is a scarcity-based model. So in this step 4, we need to shift from a scarcity to an abundance mindset. Big question, how can we do that? And lastly, this 5th step is to build resilience, to understand what is our typical mode of behavior when we are not in our authentic power. For example, when I'm operating from fear, I was just in LA yesterday and I got stuck in traffic 3.5 hours and I hate it. I can't tell you how much I hate it. And I get flustered. And so my emotional system kicks in, and there's a default mode of behavior which basically runs my life when I am under this, operating from this behavior. I can trace it like a pearl chain through my entire life. If I don't become aware of this mode of behavior, this will continue to shape my life in my out-of-power situations. So this is our existential decision and our polarity. How can we become aware of that, switch the light on, and then be able to transform our default mode of behavior and just make new choices? So these are the 5 steps that we will go through in this first module of the Ambassador program. It's a very powerful program. So basically, when you look at these 5 steps that we've just gone through, what we are creating is a step-by-step approach that can be used in any organization, in any nonprofit, or even in a personal life, that creates authenticity, authentic leadership. It creates the power to build collaborative teams and well-functioning relationships. It creates a basis for building purpose-driven cultures and a model, and really to build more sustainable businesses. And the whole thing behind this is really to move ourselves from doing more all the time, being pushed around, doing more, to fully being authentically ourselves, where it's not much more about doing, but really more about being in our world. what I would like to open it up for questions at this point in time. Are there any questions from you guys? Just unmute if you want and ask a question. Otherwise, we'll continue. Any thoughts or questions? Okay, let's move. Oh, there we go. Hi. I saw that. Hi, Cora. Okay, let's continue then. So what we will be offering is this Conscious Business Ambassador Program, which I would like to make you aware of, because we believe that if we want to transform the way we build organizations, we need to have a step-by-step approach, which I introduced you to here, and we need to pull together a global network of people that are aligned. Right now, most of us are working in silos. We might be inside organizations, or we might be practitioners or consultants. It doesn't really matter, but most of us are working disjointed and non-aligned. I believe that needs to change. So the possibility that I am creating and that I would love to see is that we all pull together. Not just jump on a bandwagon and use one particular model, but bring all of our expertises into the room, all of our life experiences, our models, and then jointly go out and work with organizations. For that to work, we need to have a common foundation, which we are trying to provide here with the Conscious Business Institute and in collaboration with Wisdom Together, which is this approach here. So the program that we are offering is basically this first module in a facilitated way, which is our online program, which consists of 6 chapters. Those are probably 3 to 10 minute video segments, 10 to 12 in each chapter, with exercises and reflections that help us shift into this new paradigm. And then every 2 weeks, we'll do a webinar to check in, to answer questions, to massage those subjects, to really take them to a deeper level. And then we have discussion groups among the peers, so that we can really, again, massage these subjects and see whether they work in our day-to-day life. And we will be offering this program at a 60% reduced rate, because we really want to make it available for people around us. And we really would like to create this community that we can then go out with and create great projects with. So the layout of the program looks like this. We will be kicking it off. The plan is right now to kick it off November 28th, which would be next week. And it will go through February, the end of February, over the period of 12, 13 weeks. And every couple of weeks, there's a webinar, as you can see here. And then there are certain subjects that you will guide it through in an online program. There are a couple of questions now. Clemens, do you want to?
Yes, there were. We have one from Carla Cordova. Mm-hmm. And she wrote, "I truly believe in all this, but I usually struggle with the fact of how much can you change a person? How much should you invite already prepared people versus changing the ones you already have in your team?"
Yeah, that's a great question. Some people just don't want to change. Plus, we are not out to make a change here, because whenever we change something, there's resistance. What we are putting out here is an alternative model. Buckminster Fuller says you can never change a reality by creating change. Basically, you just have to create a better model. And our experience when we work with organizations or teams is that when we go in and offer this model, there's a huge opening, because we are addressing questions that are at the forefront of people's minds but are never being addressed. The deep yearning of how can I work in a better way? The deep yearning of how can I deal with conflicts in a better way? How can I deal with the pressure that I'm under all the time? So what we are offering is an alternative approach to which we have found people being very, very open to. Now, when push comes to shove and we deal with this model of dominance and subservience, and people need to look at their, what we call out of power behaviors, some might check out. Actually, many might not be able to go all the way. But what we have found, even in very mentally based organizations, is that people are taking it into consideration and they are discussing it with their team, and they're adopting these methodologies, and they can hold each other accountable to it. Are they going to be 100% there? Probably not. But our experience is that as we do this, we can shift them from maybe, I'm just calling out a number here, maybe 10% awareness to 30% awareness. And that makes a huge difference in the quality of the interactions in the team and the trust that's being established among the people. Does that answer your questions, Carla?
And I would like to add a little bit on that. Just really, if you think about how much we are actually changing day to day, if we are in different environments, in the family, we are probably acting somewhat different than in our team. If we meet with a superior, we act in a different way than we act with meeting with other people, other colleagues. If we meet a policeman or policewoman, we act in a different way. So there's already a lot of change going on in our lives, in ourselves, and showing how we can use that in a positive and in a very way, and how we can be an example, how we can lead by example, how we can get grounded in ourselves and bring out our positive sides and deal with these things where we have to grow up. That will already contribute to changes in other people as well. That's what I would add to that.
Yeah, thank you. And then there's another question from Megan. I have a question about how to combine business with spirituality. How can these two things be discussed in the same breath? I believe that business is a deeply spiritual endeavor, because business is an expression of our authenticity. We create something together with other people. There's nothing like that as a spiritual expression, I believe. However, we don't need to discuss it all the time. So when we go into organizations, sometimes we never mention any word about spirituality. We really pick up off where the people is. And if you go through our programs, they're designed in a way that people can usually take it and understand it. We stretch them a little bit, yeah. But there's a very, very thin veil to just opening the door to the spiritual aspects of things. So if there's an opening, we can go there and talk about these things. In our experience, when we do it in that way, people are very open to doing that. We are never woofy poofy. We're never like, ooh, this is all fancy stuff, because that alienates people. So they can be discussed in the same breath, but if it's in our experience, it needs to be done in a very grounded way.
Can I say something about that, Peter?
Sure.
I found that if you go to a business and introduce spirituality, you probably get a lot of pushback. So my thinking is, you got to find the spiritual people that have business experience, that have skill sets that are not being used, and maybe they're disgruntled by, maybe they were outsized or, by a job or down, whatever, outsourced. So how do you find I think we have to find the spiritual people and pull away the woo and bring them and to create a business around that, I think, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yes and no, because I quite frankly have really not so good experience with spiritual people in this realm. At first, we've worked with a lot of very spiritual people. They've meditated for 12 years, and it was a lot of, quite frankly, BS, because they were creating the same rubbish, but hidden behind a veil of, ooh, this is all spiritual. I'd much rather work with a person that's straight up and it's not spiritual, with somebody that hides behind this whole spiritual veil. But I hear your point that it's time and it's happening that many people that are more aware and more mindful are coming together and creating different organizations. Yeah. So thanks for your input. I think it's very, very helpful. Paul mentioned something. Can you tell us about specific organizations who you would say are a good example of conscious businesses? Well, that's a good question, because I don't believe, quite frankly, that there's a conscious business. Conscious business would mean like 100% conscious, and I don't believe that exists, because I don't even know a person that is 100% conscious. We all have our stuff going on. So the question is, to what extent can we move them along the spectrum towards consciousness and make them a little bit more conscious? The companies that come to mind, one of the ones is, for example, Patagonia, which I love, because they make a lot of decisions that are very, very conscious. Do they have everything in place? No, they're working on it like everybody else. But I believe they're a very good example. When it comes to culture, I believe Zappos is a great example. The shoe retailer, those would just be a couple that I would mention. Anything else?
And I think there's a lot more smaller companies that are not so well known that have looked at various parts of conscious businesses.
Yeah, and it's tricky because when I'm running the Conscious Business Institute, so when there's an expectation from people that comes without me saying anything, that is being put on us as a Conscious Business Institute, if we veer off that expectation for an inch, there's disappointment. Yeah, if you look at Deutsche Bank, who says passion for purpose or something like that as their slogan, nobody believes it anyway. So they can veer away a lot from that because we don't think they're conscious anyway. So once we become conscious, we have to know that we have to be in integrity with that. And that's very challenging because as I mentioned, we're all human beings. We make mistakes, things happen. So I believe in a conscious business that needs to be communicated very transparently and openly. Yeah, not to make excuses, but to just be in integrity and to manage the expectations out there.
And to understand that we are all growing, that we are all moving along a journey, along a path, and trying to do the best on that journey. I think that's part of that part as well.
Yeah. Tina asked the question, Peter, do you see an increased interest at the CEO level of organizations? I do, but I'm not sure whether CEOs are ready to move. Most of them, and I think I mentioned that to you, Tina, in our conversation, most of them have gotten there with their old ways. And they've become very successful, and they might be 50, 60 years old now. And at this point in time, to shift to a fundamentally different thinking that might not even be proven to them is a big challenge. And I don't think many of them are able to do that. So I see that there's a shift towards this and an interest and a need to change, but I don't expect them to actually do the change themselves. But they might be able to initiate it. And then we can go into the organization and work on a broader level there. Yeah. But if they're the younger CEOs and the smaller company CEOs, I definitely see an interest, an increase. And then Rolf asked the question, I have found that understanding of positive health effects or higher consciousness is a powerful motivator for the individual. That's why I think that starting with the individual is a good strategy. Yep. Yeah, it's actually one of the feedbacks that we receive, because when we start off programs, oftentimes people have been in many leadership programs and they say, oh my God, what's new in this one? But after going through the first couple of segments, they totally get it, because again, it touches the individual on a much deeper level. It's very, very rewarding to the deep pressing questions that we all have as individuals, which normal leadership programs don't address. So there's a pull from the individual once we go in and work with them.
There's one more question, Peter.
Yeah.
From Fatime. I don't know how to pronounce the name. I'm sorry about that. But hi, can you share some success stories of companies that have gone through the CB approach?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. There's one organization that we just worked with a team on the VP level. And first of all, I mean, every time they come together, you can see a change in how they work with each other and the trust level that raises and the things that they are willing to change. And they're telling me that suddenly other departments in their organization are coming to them and said, what's going on here? How do you deal in this different way? What are you doing? So not only do they become more effective, which they have told me in the feedback sessions, but also the people around them notice that there's some different things happening, that there's just a different beingness in that team. Conflicts have gone down a lot because suddenly trust rises and people are able to communicate in a better way. And another organization where we work with the board of an organization, the top 12, again, the same thing happens is they're deeply grateful for the concrete approaches that we provide to them. So how do you build ownership in your team? How do you deal with conflicts? How do you move from competition to collaboration? How do you create engagement in your team? They had a huge issue in their company where one department was just screwing up royally. And suddenly they had approaches to deal with it in a different way with the board and with their entire organization. So they are very thankful that it's just opening new doors and a new understanding on how to deal with subjects, with issues. Is that enough, or do you want more, Fatime? There she goes. Thanks, that's great. Okay.
Thanks, that's great.
All right.
Shriti just unmuted. Is there any question you want to ask?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Hi, Peter. First of all, I wanted to thank you for doing this webinar. I was looking forward to it. I was excited to have it on my calendar, and the whole approach to business is very exciting. So thank you. My question is, I'm on the creative side. I'm a solopreneur. I have my own photography and photo story business. So would a program like this be helpful for me? Because it seems like it deals a lot with teams and companies. So I guess that would be my question, since I am considering signing up for it.
Yeah, I believe it really would, because if you look at these approaches, the first thing is the first module is really to help you understand yourself. Where are you in your authentic power? Where are you out of your authentic power? Where and how you can change that. And even the second module with teams, it's maybe not the second part of the module, but the first one is really how to build functioning relationships. How do you deal with conflicts? So if you have any client, how do you work with a client? How do you work with people in a better way? So the third module too, because how do you position your company in a way that people say, I want to work with her instead of with this other person? So in my experience, it has been very helpful. I've used these approaches personally for me as well. Yeah, do you have any other questions?
Maybe adding to that, Peter is sitting in Santa Barbara, I'm sitting in Berlin, we have some other people somewhere else in the world, but we are not a team in the traditional sense that we are sitting at the same place, dealing with each other in the same way. And we're dealing with a lot of other people, like with Alfred today, or with clients, and still we can use these approaches and we put them into our everyday life. And in that way, I would say it's a similar situation to yours, as a single entrepreneur, where you don't have a close team member, but we always are in contact with others, with our clients, with people providing us with stuff, and that's where we can actually use these approaches as well.
Yeah,
and in our family life too, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Shriti. Okay, is there any other question? There's one more maybe, or?
Joe is writing, hi, the CBI website store says the ambassador program started September 2017.
Yes,
there's another path for the upcoming course, or should that link still be used?
This is, I'll give you the site here. This is the site for the collaboration program with Wisdom Together, which we are kicking off next week. So you can go to consciousbusinessprogram.com, or if you don't find it, then just drop us an email, but you should get right there. The ambassador site is indeed a program that we've kicked off in September with another group of people. So again, usually the program, when we go into organization, it runs 1,200 per module per seat. And I mentioned to you that we really would like to build this community of people that we can pull together, that we can work with over time, that become conscious business ambassadors that can support each other. And so we are basically making this available pretty much at cost for ourselves at 60% reduced rate for $4.99. We will hold this price until tomorrow night, until when we will increase it to $6.95, which is the individual price. So just for your information, if you're interested in signing up, please do so. If you have any further questions, just let us know.
Peter, if you allow me a little bit.
Yes.
Comment, the idea of collaboration between the Conscious Business Institute and Wisdom Together came up when we were preparing the Conscious Leadership Conference in Oslo, which took place on the 20th and the 21st of October in Norway, in Oslo. And at that time, Peter and I came together, and Clemens, and we discussed about what can we do to continue the energy which we are creating there at that place. When people like Otto Schommer came, and people from Bhutan, the former education minister from Bhutan came, and we had artists there. We had a professor of philosophy who was talking with his music and his clarinet was wailed there, and he put that into scientific approach and shared this experience with the audience there. So it was kind of, we brought scientists, executives, artists, and spiritual leaders together in a place to discuss how we can create a conscious leadership in this world. And leadership meant, to your question, Shiti, is that it's not only about executives who are at a board or CEOs of companies, but leadership means a leadership for yourself as well. So people who are ready and curious to become a model for others in this world. And then we said, once we are creating, and we at Wisdom Together, we had experience in creating this kind of deep experiences during 2 or 3 days of conferences, or places where people can come together. But the question which everybody told us is, so how to continue? How to build on this, how to go deeper on this. And then Peter and Clemens came and approached me and said, why not doing a collaboration on this, especially if you're addressing in Oslo exactly, the audience and the topic which we are addressing then in the continuation. And that's why this came into fruition, and that's why we collaborated. And we said, and there were a lot of people in the audience in Oslo. Peter held a workshop there, and there was this kind of question, okay, what can we do? How can we sign up? And Peter introduced this program, and that's why we said, okay, let's offer that to people if they are interested in.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thanks, Alfred,
Thanks a
for
lot.
setting the context away at the end. I love it. All right. I would like to conclude to stay in time integrity. If you have any further questions, just drop us an email at this email address down here, and then we would really look forward to seeing you online when we start this program here. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your interest. Thanks for stepping up. It's really, really precious to me to have you here. Look forward to seeing you soon. Have a wonderful day or a wonderful evening wherever you are. Take good care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Alfred.